All right, here we are. Here we are. Hello, 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 everyone. We are live, and I'm really excited. Now, if you don't know who I am, let me introduce myself. My name is Linda G. Robert. I am your Back in the Groove Again coach, and thank you for tuning in either live or on the replay. Now, one of the things that you probably know about me by now, but if you don't, you need to know that I love meeting interesting people, especially those that can offer some guidance, some support, and some wisdom to some of my listeners and to some of my subscribers. So today I am super excited here to introduce you to Melissa Johari. I hope I pronounced that right,
Yeah,
Melissa.
you got it. Spot on.
Good. Good. And Melissa is the founder and the clinic director of the Couples Wellness Experts, a practice that she launched in 2012. Wow, that's a long time. And she's a registered social worker who practices psychotherapy at her private clinic in Mississauga, Ontario, Canada. By the way, yes, we are in
Mhm.
Canada. And later this year, she'll be opening a second location in Sarnia, Ontario. Now, currently, Melissa leads a growing team that includes two associates and one intern. That's impressive, honestly. You know, your educational background is also impressive.
Aw.
You hold an undergrad degree in psychology, master's in social work, and more recently, you've completed a second master's in theological studies. That was
Yeah.
just last year, right, in 2024.
Yes.
20 years after your first one. That takes a lot of nerve, but maybe we'll probably talk a little bit about that. Now, Melissa's work focuses on supporting couples at every stage of their relationships, whether they're dating, preparing for marriage, or navigating long term committed partnerships. She's also the creator of iLEAAD. I hope I pronounced that right as
Mhm,
well.
mhm.
Good. A unique couples conversation tool designed to help partners communicate in deeper, healthier ways. And we'll definitely, talk about that. And if that wasn't enough, Melissa has a number of that really exciting projects on the go, a
Mm.
book, some workshops and retreats. And that's how we kind of met was through
Mhm.
retreats. But these retreats are all aimed at helping couples reconnect and thrive. Now, we have a lot of things to talk about today. So we're going to get
Mhm.
started. Welcome.
Thank
Welcome.
you. Thanks for the intro.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for having me, Linda.
it's my pleasure.
And then just to clarify too, so in terms of the Mississauga location, so my associates are there. We
Okay.
have this space. It's a limited in-person session. So right now we're only there on Fridays, but the bulk of our sessions are virtual. So we're able to provide services for anyone across Ontario. So if you have a computer and a webcam, we can offer that service to you. So yeah, it's mainly virtual, and the space in Mississauga is at Portico Church. Right now we're there Fridays, and then when I moved to Sarnia, so I'm moving there. My son and I are moving there personally on in July, end of June, early July,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm planning to have a location there as well, like a in person
Great.
and virtual still. So um, the bulk of my clients really, ever since pandemic, has been
Well, I was going to
virtual.
ask you, I had to ask. Yeah, tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about that. What happened during that time?
That with the pandemic, yeah, because I had a location. I was renting a space from a wellness center in Bloor West Village here in Toronto. And it was a nice space. The people were amazing. It was multidisciplinary. So there was, massage and naturopathic doctor and
Yeah,
homeopath. And so it was really nice. It was
yeah.
nice to be able to have that network. But yeah, it unfortunately it didn't survive the pandemic. And so once that closed, then I had already done some. I was already offering virtual, but once that closed, then obviously it went 100% virtual,
Yeah.
and then I had been doing that for a number of years, and then Actually, it's funny because the location in Mississauga, I had that set up to start pre-pandemic, and
Oh,
then when the pandemic hit, then that was kibosh. But once things were kind of sort of back to normal, then I was able to resume with that location as planned. So that's
good.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and I think people appreciate that now, like some of us
Yeah.
do prefer going on site for sure, but I think a lot
Mm-hmm.
of us have gotten used to meeting
Yeah,
people virtually.
it's
Let's
true.
face that. So
Yeah,
I
it's
want to
true.
start with how you all got started, how you started,
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
why in
Mm.
all of the other things you could have specialized in.
Yeah, yeah.
So how did you get started with this?
Yeah, it's a big question, Linda. I don't know how much time you have or how deep you want to go, but
Well,
yeah.
we usually try to keep this podcast at around 30-35 minutes. So
Okay, okay, good. Yeah. I'll try to contain myself. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of like many therapists out there. They have their backstory of why they were
yeah,
drawn into this industry. Usually we are helpers, and
yeah,
we often grew up in families where maybe there wasn't positive dynamics, and so we had a mission to change that in the world.
yeah.
So that's definitely my story. My parents separated when I was 4 years old, so I was
Oh,
definitely too young to remember conflict between them per se, but just the idea that they were not together. And I was raised by my mom. I didn't have a whole lot of contact with my dad. It wasn't until later on in teen years or adulthood, more so, that he really was more engaged in my life. Um, and and so with that, there's always that fantasy. When you're a child of divorce, separation, there's that fantasy of, oh, maybe one day they'll get back together. And
of
so
course.
that was a fantasy, admittedly, for many years.
Yeah.
It was probably not until maybe my 20s that I really, and it wasn't an explicit thing that I vocalized, but it was just something in my mind.
Sure.
But it wasn't until my 20s that I really understood and accepted that no, it's not going to happen. They're not going to ever get back together. But
Yeah.
I have a heart for relationships. I definitely see the value in having intact families. I experienced and I know what that's like to not have one of the parents who is around that much. So I definitely know the value of there being a healthy role model for a good relationship. So not only is that important for the couple, but it's also important for the children and role modeling, um,
Absolutely.
and and for them to be able to have that healthy bond with each other. Research shows that it actually improves their health, it improves their longevity. Research shows that they live about 6 years longer if you're in a
Mm,
healthy long-term relationship. And so that all kind of led to my communication tool called iLEAAD, because
yeah.
that was developed in terms of leading by example. We are leading as a couple to be that example for our children, and leading each other, because sometimes couples get caught up in that negative cycle, and then it's hard to step out of that. It's hard to have that emotional maturity to be able to take a step back, take some perspective,
Yes.
be the bigger person, and the next words or the next action be a step towards a positive cycle. So you're leading by example within the relationship as well, by stepping into a positive cycle. So
Yes.
that's how it kind of came to fruition. Yeah.
Wow. There's so many different things I want to say, but I'm also just a little bit of my personal background. You probably didn't know this, but my parents split up too when I was 10.
Okay.
I lived
Yes.
with my grandmother. I went and moved with my grandmother,
Okay.
and I know that some of my audience knows this, but I've been married 3 times as well.
Wow.
And my
Learned a
first one
lot.
was Well, I learned a lot, yes, but the first
Yeah.
one was he passed away when I was 21.
Oh,
The other two were
oh,
divorces,
I'm so
but
sorry. That's horrible.
oh, that's fine. I was 21. That was a long, long time ago.
Yeah.
But I also want to share that my kids, of course, they were their father was the second marriage. They experienced what you kind of talked a little bit about, where their father wasn't present in their lives. And
Mm-hmm.
anyways, that's a whole other story. But I thought
Yeah.
it's so interesting that we have a similar history in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Let's
Yeah.
get back to talk about your communication tool, because I know
Mm-hmm.
that communication is probably one of the biggest things that cause
Mm-hmm.
separations or divorces. So let's talk a little
Mm-hmm.
bit more about your tool, please.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. So it's an acronym. So the I stands for I statements. So being able to really lead with the feeling word. So I feel X when Y, I need Z. So leading with that feeling word, and then that, I'm a certified Gottman therapist. So in Gottman's terms, it's using that softened startup. Right. So the feeling word I feel. So for example, if I have this in the hand, and I can share the handout with you so you
That'd
can
be
share and
great.
pass it along. But
Yeah.
it's also on my website. So if people go on thecouplewellnessexperts.com, and then there's a communication tool offer on there, and they can put their email in to request the iLEAAD to be sent to them. So it'll automatically be sent to them if they go on the website there.
I
But
hope I put it right. Coupleswellness.com.
the couple
The
wellness
couples. Oh,
experts,
the.
yeah, the
Okay.
couplewellnessexperts.com. Yeah.
Okay. Let me do that
Yeah.
again. I'm sorry about
The
that. Okay.
couplewellnessexperts.com.
Okay.
Here, I don't know if I can put it in the chat.
The couple wellness.
The
You know what?
couplewellnessexperts.com. I'll put it in the
The
chat here.
couple wellness expert.com. All right.
I know
Now,
it's a
if
long
this
one.
isn't it, guys, we'll get it.
Here.
Oh, there. Thank you.
Yeah. That'll be easier probably.
Yeah, there we go. And I can copy
Yeah.
that and paste it. That's perfect. Great. And
Yeah.
we will add it to, the descriptions as well. So no
Sure.
worries.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll get it. Yeah. All right.
Perfect.
Good.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
So
Thank you.
in the handout, the example there is, a couple where one of them is irritated because the other person is on their phone during dinner and not engaging in conversation, and the digital distractions are these days very damaging in relationships, and so they can start that with an I statement. So, and even using language around parts. So, internal family systems is another influence in my practice. So they could say something like, "Part of me feels lonely when you're on the phone during dinner, and I need you to engage in conversation with me. If that happened, I would feel loved and cared for."
Right.
So they're bringing in the feeling word of how they feel now with that need not being met, and then how they would feel if that need were met, and they're phrasing it in a positive language of, this is what I want instead, right? Instead of just, I see this a lot with the couples that I work with. They are very, very good at describing what they don't want.
Absolutely.
This is what
Right.
you do, and this is what I really gets on my nerves, and so
Right.
it's that's very easy to say, but then flipping that of what
Yes.
is it that you want instead, right? And making that really explicit.
Yeah. And it
So
takes practice, right? It takes practice
yes,
because we don't
yes,
talk like that. We simply
yes,
don't talk like
exactly.
that,
Yeah, yeah.
honestly. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is something, honestly, I feel like needs to be taught in schools, just so that, the next generation can have these tools, because we don't necessarily get them from home, and we don't learn it in school. So then where are we supposed to learn this? It's when we're in
Exactly.
therapy that we end up learning
Exactly.
these
And
things. And then we could have prevented a lot of heartache if we just learned these things earlier. But yeah,
absolutely.
so the acronym, so the I is for I statements, and then the L, so I lead, the L is for listening. So the person who is on the receiving end of the statement, they need to kind of put on their empathy hat, their listening ears, and be able to really be in the moment and without judgment, without distraction, and really pay attention to what is being told. And sometimes even just writing things down is helpful, right? Just to kind of slow down the process and make it really intentional around, okay, this is our dedicated time to be able to share our hearts with each other. Let's kind of explore that, in a meaningful way. So the listener can empathize, they ask open-ended questions, and then summarize what they heard, right? So
So we're
what I hear
talking
you
about
saying
active
is,
listening skills here, right? That
yes,
we
that's a
don't
part of it.
learn.
Yeah.
This is a part of it, right? But we don't
Yes.
learn that in a family necessarily.
Necessarily. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So bringing that in, and it goes a bit like with the iLEAAD. I'll share a bit more, but it takes the active listening, but it goes beyond that. So,
Okay.
we already started with the gentle startup, which is more than, it's a step beyond active listening, right? It's how you start that conversation. And with Gottman's research, he found that how the first 3 minutes of a conversation goes will dictate how the rest of that conversation goes and be predictive of how the rest of the relationship will go. So the first 3 minutes, how it starts out, is really, really important. So that's why the I statement's really key.
Yeah.
And then, the L for listening. So that's where you get into the active listening, kind of traditional, more active listening. And then the E is for empathize. So I lead. E is for empathize. So being able to really be present with the partner and see it from their perspective of what's going on for them, validating their experience. My student Mathilde, she just wrote an article on the difference between understanding and validating. Saying I understand is very, very different from actually saying, oh yeah, you felt lonely. That must have been really hard. And so being able to empathize with that in a different kind of way, it's connecting with the emotion, right? So that has a very different feel.
And I would feel heard. I would feel
Yes.
heard if I heard
Yes.
that, right? You hear me,
Exactly.
you get it, you understand me.
Exactly. And research has shown that too, with high conflict negotiations, like never mind relationships, but just in high conflict negotiations, that's what's needed, is the one person to, or the one party to express some understanding and validation of where they're coming from, where the other person's coming from. And only then, once you have that validation, then there's an openness to be able to receive the other person's perspective, right? So it facilitates the compassion, the understanding between both parties to be able to reach that next step of, okay, now, I feel heard, I feel understood. Now I'm open to be able to hear what you have to say. Maybe your perspective is different, and that's okay. So let's explore that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would be more apt to do that,
Yeah.
knowing that I've been heard
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
I've been validated, and now I'm feeling okay. All right.
Exactly. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love
It
that.
brings the openness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so we have the I statement, we have the listening, we have the empathy, and then the first A. So there's two A's. So the first
Oh,
A
right.
is apologize. So, sometimes there is an apology warranted. Sometimes there's not. It just depends on the situation. But if there is an apology that would be useful, then now's the time to do it, right? So making that apology and making that repair in the relationship so that you can reconnect with each other. And are you familiar with Gary Chapman, the 5 love languages?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So he has his apology languages too. So I think that's really neat, because an apology it's not necessarily always just saying, oh, sorry. Like there's more to it that could be more meaningful. So there's 5 different apology languages, and if people are curious, they can Google it. But
Are they associated with the love languages?
That's a good question. I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. Maybe it is, but I don't think so. Like, I mean, for example, one of the apology languages is making a plan for change. So maybe that plan for change is connected to acts of service, maybe. But I think it is 2 distinct entities. But yeah, there's expressing regrets, accepting responsibility, making restitution, plan change, and then requesting forgiveness. So do you forgive me? For some people, if someone says, do you forgive me? It's irritating, right? But for some people, they want that. They like to hear that.
Yes.
For me, I don't like that. I'm more of a, what are you going to do differently next time?
Right.
So making that restitution or making that plan for change. So,
but it probably would be helpful, Melissa, if I was your spouse, that I know this about you, right?
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So people can go on on Gary Chapman's website. They can do the 5 love languages test, and then they can also do the apologies test, and then you'll know it'll tell you what your love or what your apology language is. Yeah. So it's a good tool. Yeah. So we have the I statement, the listening, the empathy, the apology, and then there's a little heart you'll see on the handout. There's a little heart in between the 2 A's. So the heart indicates now there's a shift to more of a dialogue as opposed to a speaker listener role. So originally the one person who maybe had something on their mind, they brought it forward, they used that I statement, then the listener fed that back. Before you kind of go to the dialogue part, the listener, once they validate, only after they validate and after there's an apology, they can say, I have a few thoughts on this. Is that okay for me to share my perspective? And then they can switch roles. So then the speaker becomes a listener, the listener becomes a speaker, and you kind of walk through the iLEAAD again from the other side, right? So then once that's done, so it's not always necessary. Maybe it's really one person sharing what's on their mind, and the other person, they get it and they're like, oh yeah, I kind of goofed up there, sorry about that. And then that's it. Like, they don't need to switch roles, but if needed, then especially if there's some point of disagreement, then yeah, it is helpful to switch roles and then the other person to hear what the listener has to say then. So they can switch roles at that point. And then after that's all done, then it moves to kind of this more of an open dialogue where they can then talk about the A. So the next A is accept. So they can talk about what am I willing to accept here? What is okay? What is not okay? What's my boundary? What are you able to meet? What are you able to do to meet that? Kind of going back to the original example of the partner who was on the phone during dinner time, and then the other person was feeling lonely. So maybe once they switched listener roles, the new the new speaker, so the one who was on the phone, maybe they're saying, you know what, I get it. I like spending time with you too. I like having dinners with you too, but sometimes I have a deadline with work and I have to meet that deadline. Like there are those exceptions where I do need to be on the phone during that time. And so they can kind of share from their perspective what they need too, right? So when you come to the acceptance stage of the conversation, then you can kind of talk with each other around, okay, we've heard each other out. We know where each other stand. We know what each other needs. What can we do from here? So maybe like with this example, maybe it's the original person saying, okay, I'm aware that part of me feels lonely when you're on the phone during dinner, but I accept
Right.
that there are times where you just need to get back to someone urgently, and I'm choosing to support you during those times.
Right.
Right. So there's a lot packed in that sentence, right? Like being able to truly accept that in your heart and choosing a different
Response, I guess. Right.
a different response.
Sense.
Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's accept. So we have the iLEAAD, I statement, listening, empathy, apology, acceptance, and then the D is for decide.
Mm.
So this is, I mean, this could be, it depends on the situation, but the decide could be, you know what, just feeling heard and talking this through was amazing. I feel
Right.
so much closer to you. I feel like we have a good understanding of each other. I feel like we have a good kind of, plan moving forward of, you'll try to be off your phone during dinner, but if you do need to be, then I'll be okay with that. I'll accept that.
Yeah.
So maybe just that conversation was enough, or maybe there needs to be a little bit more. So you can decide that together, right? You can decide like what else is kind of needed from this point moving forward. Maybe it's actually writing down that action plan. Like maybe
Right.
it's being able to commit and be more specific. Maybe like, okay, I can commit to the first half of dinner, like the first half an hour, I'll put the phone away.
Right.
I'm not going to even have it near me. That half an hour is dedicated to dinner with you, and I'm going to protect that time. Maybe that's the arrangement, the compromise that they come to, and then if there is a deadline or something, then it kind of they're allowed to do that, so to speak, or they have that freedom to do that if needed. So they come to some kind of compromise. Maybe it's something that's just a verbal compromise, or maybe they write that down as like an action plan that's written down. The reason that I like a written action plan is because sometimes couples will come together, have a conversation, and then leave with two different understandings.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So if they write it down, it might be just make it more tangible and concrete of this is what we're actually agreeing to. So reaching that compromise might be what you decide to do. Another kind of option in terms of next steps or making a decision is this more? Is there more to this? Is there something deeper here going on? Maybe there's a sense of loneliness in other kind of areas. Maybe this is a pattern in the relationship. And so if that's the case, then that calls for a whole other kind of conversation in terms of, figuring out what, in Gottman's terms, if there's a perpetual issue here, what can we do to navigate that? And just a fun fact, so in Gottman's research, he found that there was a certain percentage of problems that any given couple has that are just not going to go away, right? They're perpetual, they're ongoing. They might find a temporary solution, a temporary compromise, but it'll still come up in some other kind of way at another time. So it's in essence perpetual. So, and that might have to do with lifestyle, personality, preferences, let's say family background, or religious differences or political differences. So, those things are a little harder to change. So it'll be perpetual. So Linda, if you were to guess what percent of problems, all the problems that couples face, among all the problems that they face, what percent is perpetual? What would you say?
I would say, well, I'm thinking a lot of them are perpetual. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that might be because sometimes we don't choose our partners consciously. We just pick them. we just start going out with somebody,
Yeah.
and we might get married. We don't spend the time to not only get to know ourselves more, which is kind of where I come from, because that's what it's really all about for me. It's about self-awareness and loving ourselves and self-care. And then when we're ready, when we know ourselves, then let's move forward and find a partner. So I think that's an issue here.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And in the book that I'm writing too, I have the first chapter is on that. Like, are you sure this is the person you want to spend your whole life with? Because
That's
the issues
right.
that you're facing now will probably be there years to come. Right.
Yeah.
So we have to choose carefully about what set of perpetual issues we're agreeing to for the rest of our life. So you said it's high. Yeah. And you're right. So a lot of people guess like lower, maybe 30-40%, but it's actually 69%.
Yeah, I believe that. I believe that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
So, I know. Unfortunately, yeah. I mean, it's just a fact of life, and some people see that as like doom and gloom, like, oh no, this is what I have to deal with for the rest of my life. But some people see it as kind of a refreshing, fact that they can hold on to, because you don't then get caught up in the grass is greener on the other side.
Right.
No, that's not the case, because on the other side of the fence, it's a whole other set of perpetual issues. So just, choosing, and that comes back to acceptance, right? With these perpetual issues, can you accept that your partner is different in these kind of ways? Like maybe even just coming down to, tidiness, cleanliness, like, one person may be just more tidy than the other person, and that, maybe the one who's not as tidy will make those efforts for some time, but then it kind of slips back and in that again, and saving differences, like one person saves more than the other person, and that's just kind of their tendency, and that can be addressed. That can be addressed in certain ways, but then it might pop up in other ways, and at different times. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of things I want to just bring up, and I want to talk about the retreat. So I'm putting that here at this time. I will talk about it, but I also want to ask you, and I remember I told you that I was married 3 times. Last husband, we were in our 30s. He wanted to go through counseling.
Okay.
And at that time, I didn't think I had a problem. I was so naive. I didn't think I had a problem, but I agreed to go, and I didn't even pay attention to it. Okay, so I went to maybe one session, but I didn't have the problem, so I didn't even bother listening or didn't bother doing anything. Right. So I guess my question is, when should people go? Number one, should both people be invested in doing this? Like, let's talk a little bit about that. Okay, then we will talk about your retreat.
No, it's such a good question. So, I mean, in my practice, I market myself as the couple wellness expert, right? So, so it's literally marketing as a couple therapist. But even despite that, I still get referrals for individuals. So when that happens, so maybe I might have individuals on my caseload. Maybe it ranges, but anywhere between like 5 to 20%. Right. So the rest is all couples, but maybe 5 to 20% any given time. So let's say maybe 10% on average would be individuals. Among those individuals that see me, it's usually because of relationship issues, right? It's usually because they are having an issue with their spouse, and the spouse doesn't want to come, and so then they're kind of just trying to navigate the scenario. And so so we, it is possible. It's possible to do kind of couple work with one person, with an individual, and that's kind of tied to the feedback loop that that has been researched in the couple and family therapy world. So Sue Johnson is the founder of emotionally focused therapy, and so she noticed this loop that happens, this feedback loop, this negative dance, she likes to call it, between couples, right? So with the feedback loop, in essence, if you're changing one part of the loop, you're going to change the dynamic that will play out
at some point.
Yeah. So it's inevitable that there will be change. Maybe it'll be a bit slower change, if you're doing the individual as opposed to working with both people there as a couple, but it certainly is possible. And in terms of like, when should we come and see, a couples therapist? I truly believe in preventative care. So that's why I'm writing a book on for premarital couples, because I love getting in there beforehand, before
Yes.
any of the issues kind of start, and doing that preventative care to be able to start the marriage on a solid foundation. They have the skills, they have the tools. I load them up with their toolbox. Like, they have all the tools that they need for inevitable conflicts in the future.
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
That's right.
Yeah, for sure. Or stressors, right? Life transitions. Maybe a child comes along, or a job loss, or
any major life
parent.
event, right?
Yeah, even a move, like, all these kind of factors that add to the stress on the couple. How are they going to be able to navigate that successfully so that they can come out the other side, right? So yeah, I do believe in that preventative care. And oftentimes when I see couples who are kind of more on the brink of the end of the relationship, and this is kind of their last ditch effort, as we get into it, they often say, man, I wish we were here 5 years ago. Man, I wish we were here 10 years ago. Yeah. So yeah.
Thank you. Now, I do want to talk about the retreat. That's how we kind of met.
Yeah.
We met through a retreat community group. Anyways, please.
Yeah, which is so great.
That, please.
Yeah. So I've had 2 couple retreats already. So they were both in Mississauga at the Queen of Apostles Renewal Center in Mississauga. So it's nice. It's kind of a local getaway. So it's in an area it's quite lovely, with all the homes are beautiful. It's in a nice area, and then the grounds itself are quite lush. So it's by a ravine, and so there's different places that you can kind of sit and ponder and just chat. And so as soon as you kind of drive into the space, you're already kind of feeling the city leave you behind. So it's kind of a retreat within the city, which is nice, and it's convenient for people. So anyways, the last 2 years I've been offering this retreat in the spring. So my next one will be next May, the last weekend of May, and all the details are on the website as well for that. There's a couple retreat page specifically that goes through all the details of the retreat. But basically, it's an opportunity to walk through Gottman's 7 principles for making marriage work. So with that, we walk through the sound relationship house. So I wonder if I can quickly grab it. Oh, here, it's right here. So, and here's the book, if I can reach with so this is the book that we, the retreat is based on. So the 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. It's by John Gottman. So it's a bestseller. He's been doing relationship research for 50 years. So it's phenomenal. Everything that they've been able to take that research and then create strategies to be able to apply to relationships, to be able to change the trajectory of the relationship to be stronger. And then so we walk through the sound relationship house. So Gottman's research, this is basically a pictorial summary of 50 years of research. So the bottom 3 layers are the friendship foundation. So how well you know each other as a
I
love
love
map.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it
love that.
is. It's kind of nice to follow. So the fondness and admiration, how much you respect and adore each other, turning towards each other instead of away from each other, positive perspectives. So if there's a general culture of positivity versus negativity in the relationship, conflict management, making life dreams come true. So are there gridlock issues getting in the way of those dreams together? And then shared meanings, so roles, goals, all that falls under here. Rituals of connection. And then the trust and commitment on the sidewalls is the adult attachment in the relationship. So yeah, we walk through the 7 principles are connected to the house, and we walk through all the different, not all because there's a lot, but we walk through various exercises to be able to um, have meaningful conversations with each other, to foster that friendship, to be able to have challenging conversations successfully. So that's what we do on the weekend.
Oh man, yeah. Well, where were you 20, 30, more than
I know, hindsight's like, oh
this is
boy.
so important. And I think that to admit I need help, we need
Yeah,
help is tough.
it is tough.
It's tough
Yes,
because you get the arguing, the back and forth, the conflict, and
yes,
then at one point you go, "This is it, I'm done." All of that cycle, and
yeah,
it
yeah,
it would be easier to say, "Okay, I need help. We need help," and
yeah,
it's to get there at some point, right? It's to get there because
yeah,
it's so important, and especially
yeah.
when you have kids too,
Yeah. And it
children.
takes courage. It takes a lot of
Absolutely,
courage to be able to reach
yeah.
out for help. So it's not a sign of
Yeah,
weakness. I think that's a misnomer out there that it's weak to go see a therapist. No, it's actually very
no.
courageous. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right. I
Takes a lot
did
of
go
courage.
through therapy quite a few years ago. I wasn't married at the time because those relationships ended, but
Yeah.
I did go through uh, therapy at one point when I was
Yeah.
going through something, and
Yeah.
it was really helpful. I was ready
Good.
for it,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? I was ready for it,
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
was open to getting some help, what I
Yes.
needed. So
Yes.
that's an
Yes.
important thing. You have to be open. You
That's
have to be ready.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
key. That's really
yeah,
that's a big part of the therapeutic work is just readiness.
that's
Yeah,
right.
and that's not anything we can force, right? As a therapist, we have to just be patient
That's
and when the
right.
timing is right. And sometimes couples will come and maybe do a few sessions and just it's not gelling, it's not like the
Mhm.
readiness isn't there.
That's
But
right.
then later on, once there has been some kind of shift for either one of them or both of them maybe, then they come back again and then wow, then you can really dive in, then you can really do some meaningful work and be able to have the material kind of stick, right? Then they're applying what we've talked about in
That's right.
session, they're
Yeah.
doing all the things, and so yeah, then it's really powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Listen. Wow. We've had a heck of a conversation today. How
I
can we
know.
find out more? So is it the couples? I'm just going to put it out here.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
the
hope I spelled that right.
couplewellnessexperts.com. Yep, that's
Excellent.
spot on. Yeah. Yeah, perfect.
Good,
Yay.
good, good, good.
Yeah, people can go
Any,
on there. I
yeah.
mean, there's information about my team on there. There's all the services we offer on there, the retreats. I also developed a relational wellness wheel way when I first
Oh, I
started my
love that.
practice.
Mm,
Yeah, it's
mm.
nice because it captures, how different areas of our life are connected. Everything is, I come from a holistic lens, so everything is connected.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And yeah, even like I'm studying to be a yoga instructor right now too.
Oh,
So yeah, I'm wanting to bring in that physical, the somatic approach to the work too. So and especially like doing uh, restorative couples yoga. I think that's
right,
that's the
right.
vision with that. And then yeah, there's a blog on there too, so you can check that out as well.
That's
So
wonderful.
yeah,
All right. Well, you know what? I enjoyed the conversation today, and I know we've had
thank you,
viewers. We've had
thank you.
viewers on the YouTube channel. So hello,
Great,
hello.
great.
Before we leave, I'm speaking to the people that are watching us right now on YouTube. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. You know that
Now's the
when I do a
time.
live,
Yep.
if you have questions, please add them. No questions are silly, right?
Yes.
We're here to answer your questions.
Yes.
So please
All
feel
questions are
comfortable.
valid. Yes.
That's right. Well, just stay
Yeah.
on. And we've got one person
Sure.
watching on Facebook right now too.
Okay.
I'm able to see that. I love this. One of the reasons I love this platform. We can
That's so
see
nice.
who's on. I don't know who's watching us, but we know we've got
Yeah.
one person on Facebook and a couple of people on my YouTube channel. So if you have any
Wonderful.
questions, please add them. We'll be here for another few seconds or so. And of course, if you're watching the replay, I'm sure some people will be watching the replay. Add your questions there. And then we'll respond. We'll help you out in one way or the other. All right, I'm just going to put your site here one more time.
Sure.
Voila.
Thank you.
Voilà. Are your services
Thanks,
in
Linda.
English only, by the way? Ou est-ce que tu parles le français aussi? Ou...
Je parle français un petit peu.
Okay.
Mais actually, my intern speaks fluent French.
It'd be
And
great
then
to
we
know.
had talked about that possibility of her offering services in French. But then the only issue with that is then she'd have to do the case note in English. So it's kind of,
right.
it takes a lot of cognitive load to, do the session in French and then write the note in English. But yeah,
That's
we'll
right.
we'll see. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, it's perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank
So we will end our live right here. Thank you again, whoever is watching.
Thank you. Thanks,
Merci.
Linda.
Thank you for being
Yes.
here.